Hi, I'm Dr. Tiffany Vora, and I'm here today to share with you why I think life is tomorrow's greatest technology. When we think about the future, there's a lot of uncertainty, and in fact, you might be feeling a bit like this person, alone in the dark with a very small light. But I want to share with you a quote that helps me feel positive about the future and actually empowers me to change it. And it's a quote from a woman named Christiana Figueres, who was born in San Jose, Costa Rica, and then became the executive secretary for the UN Framework for Climate Change. And here's what she says. She says, if we can see where we are going, a future in which humanity does what is necessary to preserve the planet as we know and love it, we will take faster, surer steps to get there. So I want to share with you how I picture the future as a biologist, as a mother, and just as a person. I picture a world with clean, healthy, beautiful land that's managed well with all the resources we need. I picture beautiful, clean, diverse, healthy oceans that are beautiful. I also picture clean, healthy food for everyone who needs it. And I picture long, healthy lives that we live with the people that we love. So how do we get from today to this beautiful future of abundance? The answer is we make it. We use technology to make ourselves the best we possibly can be, as people, as societies, and even as a whole species. Now, it's easy to think about technology as something really big and very far away. But today, the technology I want to talk about with you is actually something that could be much smaller, much closer to home, and in fact, even in our very bodies. And that technology is based on life. So in order to understand that, we need to take a step back and remember that all life on Earth is related. All life on Earth, including humans, are made of cells. And if you go into a cell and you zoom all the way down to the level of the nucleus, you start to see these things called chromosomes, which are basically the operating manual for that living thing. If you zoom in even closer on those chromosomes, you get down to the level of the famous DNA double helix, which is made up of 4 chemicals, which for short we call A, C, T, and G. Now humans have, let's call it 3 billion of these A, C's, T's, and G's. The order of those A, C's, T's, and G's tells our body what to do. And every human being on Earth is 99.9% identical to every other human being on Earth. We all run on the same source code. And what's exciting about this source code is that it's also open source. So when I think about DNA, which I do a lot, I don't just think about that double helix. I think about information. To me, life is information. And when we think about life as information, and when we think about digital biology, that means that everything that we can do with computer code, we can also do with DNA code. So for example, let's say what I wanted to do was move big pieces of DNA code around. Well, that's called genetic engineering, and we've known how to do that since the 1970s. Let's say what I want to do is write DNA code from scratch. That's called synthetic biology, and that's something we're going to talk more about in a minute. But let's say what I want to do is go in and debug the source code of life one letter at a time. That's called gene editing. You've probably heard of a technology called CRISPR today that's in the news, and it's one of the most powerful tools we have in order to program the future of life. But where do we actually get these A, C's, T's, and G's from? How can we access the source code of life? Well, the way we do that is with a bunch of machines that are called DNA sequencers. Now, there are lots of different kinds of DNA sequencers. Here's one example of a modern kind of DNA sequencer, which is called a MinION. It's small enough to hold in your hand, and it plugs into a laptop by USB. Now, this is amazing because it completely changes who can access this information and how they can access it, and perhaps even most importantly, how much it costs. This handheld DNA sequencer costs about the same as 2 VIP tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. Now, that's about $1,000 or 18,000 South African rand. So that's amazing. What kinds of things can people do with all this access to the DNA source code of life? Well, 2 years ago, during the Zika outbreak, a group of researchers in Brazil took a bus, converted it into a mobile lab, and then took some of these DNA sequencers around Brazil to monitor the Zika outbreak, who was getting sick, how they were getting sick, and follow how that disease was moving around the country. It was really, really helpful for the people of Brazil. And today, during today's COVID outbreak, we're also seeing not just these little DNA sequencers, but other DNA sequencers around the world, which are helping people track how the virus is changing, how it's moving around the world, how it's making people sick. And in fact, people have even figured out how to make kits, mobile laboratories that fit in a briefcase in order to take this type of technology all around the world and help people where they need it. It's really a very exciting time. So what can we do with this source code of life once we actually get a hold of it? When we can view the biology as the technology, we start seeing a lot of breakthroughs in all kinds of fields, from agriculture, health, materials, sensing, lots of cool things. Let's take a look at some examples. Just a few. There's so many cool examples. But let's look at a couple of examples of things that open up when we view the biology as the technology. So first, let's think about food. Right now, our food comes from killing animals. A lot of it does, right? Whether it's intensive agriculture or whether it's industrial fishing, we murder billions of living things every year in order to make our food. But what if I told you that using technology, we could actually grow meat and real fish in tanks, kind of like brewing beer, and that would mean that you would never have to kill another animal again in order to eat that delicious meat that you love so much. Well, this is happening right now today. It's a technology called cellular agriculture. And I'm not sure whether it's going to transform the way we eat everything, but I tell you, I am really excited to find out. And all of this is based on the idea of using life as technology. Now, so that's meat, but what about you and your body? What if, say, you got in a car accident and you needed a new body part, a new arm or a new liver? Well, today you would have to wait for someone else to be in an accident in order to get their organ as an organ donor. But there are these really cool parts of your body and lots of other living things called stem cells. Stem cells are cells that can give rise to every other kind of cell in the body. They're actually what's used in cellular agriculture that I just showed you about. But let's talk about humans for a minute. A few years ago, some researchers in Japan figured out how to take any cell in the body and dial it back into being a stem cell. This is important because it's actually really hard to get stem cells. But using these induced pluripotent stem cells, you can make the stem cell from any cell in the body, like just from the inside of your cheek, and then you can dial it forward to become many other cell types. And this is amazing because imagine you could replace the neurons in someone with Alzheimer's, their brain. Imagine you could replace the heart cells in a person who has heart disease. These are the types of things that folks are working on now. And in fact, they're even working on building whole new organs for people's inside pigs. Now, this is crazy because it's not just building a heart, it's building your heart. I could take your heart stem cell, your cells from anywhere in your body, turn them into stem cells, and then turn them forward into your heart cells and maybe even build a whole heart in a pig. Now, we're a ways off from that yet, but there are companies right now today who are working on this, and it's really exciting. Another thing we could do with stem cells, what happens when we mix cells and AI? Well, we get these really cool things called xenobots. This study came out just a couple of months ago, at the early part of 2020, showing that these researchers were able to take an AI, get two types of biological cells, one that moves, and they were able to assemble them together into what's called a xenobot in order to get a structure that actually moves like a robot. Now, these little tiny robots don't do anything useful yet. But remember, this is a programmable technology that could have really exciting use cases not too far in the future. So what is a robot, right? A robot is basically something that you can program to do a task. And usually these robots have lots of apps in them, right? So when we can start thinking about life as being programmable with apps, now a whole new area opens up, which is called synthetic biology. And let me show you how that works. So DNA isn't just a parts list, it's also the source code. And it's kind of like the chassis of a car, where I can take DNA modules and put them into the source code of an organism, and then the organism, which is kind of like hardware, then runs that software, runs that DNA app in order to do something. And there are all kinds of really exciting applications about this. Like, for example, maybe I could program bacterial cells in your gut to glow if they find a tumor in your intestine. Or maybe I can make soil probiotics that actually eat plastic to help get all the plastic waste out of our soil. Or maybe even I can program cells to live in my body and to make a drug so that instead of taking a pill or injecting myself, I have a living medicine. All this could be possible through synthetic biology. Unless you think I'm crazy, or in case you're really excited about this yourself, not only are there companies around the world working on these synthetic biology applications today, but there are thousands of high school students and college students who come together every year in a competition called iGEM, where they compete to use synthetic biology to come up with the coolest applications. And there was a team in 2016 from Pretoria in South Africa, so you can do this as well. All this is coming together into a future where living things act as sensors, as manufacturers, as power sources, and as computers in order to make all the food, fuel, and fiber that we need in order to sustain life on Earth. And so I'm telling you again about a future where the biology is the technology. And in fact, I think that if the 20th century was the computer age, the 21st century is going to be the biology age. Now, one last thing. I've talked about life today as if it's nothing more than a computer algorithm, but this is completely wrong. Remember, I'm a biologist, so this is obvious to me, but I want to share it with you. Life is beautiful. It's beautiful and it's weird and it's changing all the time, and a lot of it is in so much danger today because of climate change. So remember, all of this beauty, all this weirdness, all this uniqueness, it exists in exactly one place that we know of in the universe, and that's right here on our beautiful, precious planet that we have so much still to learn about. Thank you very much.